Their plan was to start with Aiden Ross, a young provocateur mostly known for collabs with celebrities on live streams of video games. And Nazis, by the way. Like,
full-blown
it's crazy that the media has, like, completely dropped the ball on this shit. Like, you're a fucking national political correspondent for the Time, and you're like, oh, Aiden Ross, you know, just a funny guy. That's crazy. Anyway.
Just a funny guy.
After scrambling to contact Trump's youngest son,
Just a goofy guy.
podcast strategy was set in motion. I mean, the Aiden Ross one was actually really bad. Overall, it wasn't that successful. But Theo Vaughn is when my attitude shifted. And you probably saw it. If you were here watching me go through the podcast route, I was like, okay, that was the Aiden Ross. The Aiden Ross one wasn't, like, it didn't really have that much motion, but the Theo Vaughn one was when I was like, oh shit, this is fucked up. This is not good. He is getting super humanized here. Over the next few months, Bruce coordinated with Barron, booked Trump on a marathon of frat-like podcast interviews with hosts who have massive young male audiences: Logan Paul, Theo Vaughn, Joe Rogan. I think it's kind of crazy that Donald Trump has been on, like, a shit ton of podcasts that I've been on with people that I know very well. There are some early signs the idea paid off. Preliminary exit polls show that Trump won over the young white man by nearly 60% while making inroads with Latino and black men. He won 42% of voters age 18
Dude, what
to
the
29.
fuck? Truck looks like a peanut.
Obviously, Trump's win is due to more than podcasts. It will take years to fully understand the sweep of his success, but this was core part of an unconventional campaign thesis: max out the men and hold the women, as a Trump aide told me. He said Trump said Norway is fine, just not from a shithole country, then brought up articles without anything mentioning Norway. He was trying to imply white supremacy, then you caught him on it, so he gave you half the quote. What do you mean? I remember some along those lines. Why are they being such sore winners? They're not. Real get out of the suit is 8:30, dog. I am. He said it at the rally. Men maxing, yeah.
Okay.
For conversations like this, the person you are talking to is not listening. What do you suggest? I suggest you keep at it. Don't be annoying. Be kind, understanding, and try to target something that they personally have convictions on. That's just what you're gonna do. That's what you have to do. Do you think Barron will inherit the crown? Yeah. Anyway. What about when it's one of your parents? You just gotta do the same thing. Anyway, I'm tired, everybody. That's it for me today. I love you all. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe. Your support, show your support by subscribing. And that's it.
Sick.
You can subscribe for free with a Twitch Prime or for $6. And I will be back tomorrow. 3-hour stream, shaking my head. Yeah, I started at fucking 11, bitch. 9 hours and 30 minutes after a 14-hour stream yesterday. Give me a goddamn break. Anyway. I'll be back tomorrow.
Have you ever had problems? And have those problems ever gotten worse over time? Exactly. Have you ever worked out and dieted so that you could lose weight? And when you
I know, Sarah. Listen. I'm not a fan of the Dems, and you know this, Sarah. You know I'm not a fan of the Democratic Party. But to act like they're the same as Trump is actually like delusional. Like to act like the outcomes between a Trump and a Kamala presidency would have been the same. It's not. You're never going to convince me of that. And I'm not saying the outcomes of a Kamala presidency are going to be good. They're not. They would be bad too. Who is acting that way? I mean, I see it fairly often, Chachki. I see that fairly often, and it always comes from the left of people saying like, well, you know, yeah, Trump is a fascist, but we already have fascism. And it's like, okay, you're right, but that doesn't mean that things can't get worse. Like, that doesn't mean that things cannot get worse. And I think a lot of people, yeah, Kamala would have been less bad. This is not a controversial take, guys. It really isn't. It is yeah. Do you agree with her take, or do you think she had to be more leftist to win? I don't agree with her take. I think that America is a white supremacist, misogynist state. That is true. However, I do think that a good political communicator can break through that. Even a black woman can break through that by telling the American public a story that explains their material conditions and offers them a solution that will address them. I think that is 100% possible, and if I didn't, I wouldn't be an activist, you know? I think there's like a defeatist attitude in what Alayemi is saying, which I think is like reasonable from coming from her perspective. You know? But I think a big part of this is that we have to fucking maintain hope. And if I really believe that America is just always going to be a white supremacist, you know, like misogynistic shithole that doesn't care about people who are marginalized at all ever, then I would be a different person. I wouldn't be the person I am. I think we can change that. I think that's a really important thing we have to change. You know what I mean? I live in a solid state, but I still voted, if anything, for the other ballot measures. It was something I told Chat too at the time. You should still participate in the election if you're in a solid state and won't vote for.
Yesterday, on the 5th of November, a Honda Jet November 75 Hotel Papa attempted to reject a takeoff well above V1 takeoff decision speed at Mesa's Falcon Field near Phoenix, Arizona, resulting in fatalities. Here's what we know so far. We already have some airport surveillance video of the incident. Unfortunately, it only picks up the incident well into the rejected takeoff, the latter part of the takeoff. And it comes to us from ABC 15 News there in Mesa. And about there's the end of the runway, and then swerve off into Greenfield Road.
Oh shit.
So right away on this video, we see the brakes locked up and the smoke coming off of those wheel brakes. The aircraft departed the end of the runway at nearly 90 miles an hour. My name's Juan Brown. You're watching the Blanco Lirio channel. Here's what we know so far. Starting with the Aviation Safety Network, on Tuesday, 5 November, a Honda HA420 Honda Jet, owner-operator Iceman Holdings, LLC. Iceman Holdings appears to be an investment firm specializing in small startup companies. November 5-7, Hotel Papa, 4 fatalities, 5 occupants, 1 other fatality. These numbers may change as this is very preliminary information. They were taking off from Mesa's Falcon Field en route for Provo, Utah. The Honda HA420 Honda Jet November 5-7 Hotel Papa was destroyed when it crashed during the takeoff attempt from runway 22 left at Falcon Field, Mesa, Arizona. 4 occupants of the aircraft and the vehicle driver perished, and the pilot suffered serious injuries.
Oh
so
shit.
It sounds as though the aircraft hit a vehicle there on Greenfield Road, killing that individual. And it sounds like the pilot survived. ADS-B data suggests that the airplane had accelerated to about 133 knots ground speed before it aborted the takeoff roughly 3,400 feet down the runway. Remember, this is a 5,100-foot runway.
Fucking long ass runway.
To stop, overran the end of the runway, and went through the airport perimeter fence before crashing into a vehicle on North Greenfield Road. A post-crash fire ensued. The estimated distance between the end of the departure end of the runway and the final resting position is 700 feet. Weather at the time was fine. Winds were calm. Temperature about 20 to 21 degrees Celsius, about 68 degrees Fahrenheit. Our friend Victor over here at Vass Aviation already has a video out on the ATC audio from this crash. The Honda Jet was cleared for takeoff. The Honda Jet pilot read back the takeoff clearance, and that was the end, or the last that we heard from the Honda Jet. There was no call to ATC regarding rejecting the takeoff. And in fact, ATC, the air traffic controller, or the tower controller here at Mesa's Falcon Field, didn't even realize the aircraft had crashed until an aircraft was departing behind the, cleared to take off behind the Honda Jet. He noticed the smoke off at the end of the runway, and he alerted the tower controller as to what had happened.
Damn, that's bad. What the fuck?
So check out Victor's video here for the entire ATC conversation. The ADS-B data here on ADS-B Exchange shows what appears to be a normal acceleration up to a V1 takeoff decision speed, and rotate speed for this aircraft in these conditions should be a little over 100 knots. So right about here in this portion of the runway, this aircraft should be rotating and taking off. But here from 103 knots at 2338.47 all the way up to 133 knots at 2338.54, some 7 seconds later, the pilot elects to reject the takeoff and attempts to get the aircraft stopped. But by now he's going much too fast, well beyond V1 decision speed, with too little runway left behind, or left ahead of him, and departs the end of the runway at 89 knots, or nearly 90 miles per hour. Here's a picture of the accident aircraft, November 5-7 Hotel Papa. The Honda Jet's unique design. It's a small personal jet with 2 small turbofan engines, about 2,000 pounds of thrust each, that are mounted on the wings on pylons separated from the fuselage in this unusual kind of rear-mounted design. The jet is capable of carrying 4 passengers and 2 crew members up front, for a total of 6 people on board, with a maximum gross weight under 12,500 pounds, which allows you,
I think it's beautiful,
pilot operations for this jet. If we look at the history, the accident history of the Honda Jet, this is the first accident in Honda Jet history that resulted in fatalities. There have been other numerous runway excursions and overruns with the Honda Jet. especially in wet conditions, with its anti-skid braking system being incapable of stopping the aircraft in some very slippery conditions. A quick look at the Google Maps at the Mesa Airport. There's the 5,000-foot long runway, then the overrun area, and if we pop down here onto Greenfield Road, looking back towards the runway, we can see the overrun area. Then the aircraft went through this perimeter fence, then down this small embankment and onto the pavement of Greenfield Road,
Fucking
headed
hit a car.
towards the orange fields beyond the other side of the road. The Honda Jet does not use traditional wing spoilers to spoil lift on the wings and aid in braking in a rejected takeoff. Wing spoilers will spoil that lift, remove the weight off of the wings, and get that weight onto the wheels and help you decelerate the aircraft. Instead, they have this spoiler system located in the tail of the aircraft to help increase aerodynamic drag, especially in the event of an emergency descent or when you need to get down quickly. I found a pilot operating handbook available here online on the Honda Jet. Unfortunately, it does not have any takeoff data in it. But if we look at this article from AOPA magazine, we can glean some of the numbers that are typically used on takeoff for the Honda Jet. And here in this article, it shows a V1 takeoff decision speed of about 110 knots. Again, these speeds vary based on the temperature, pressure, altitude, and the load on the aircraft. A rotation speed of about 115 knots indicated airspeed, and a V2 takeoff safety speed of 120 knots. So the idea behind these speeds, well, and looking at these overall numbers of the Honda Jet, this runway, a 5,000-foot runway, is an easy runway for this jet to handle. In fact, this jet can handle
more than
runways down as short as 4,000 feet safely. So the V1 takeoff decision speed is the maximum speed that you can accelerate to under two good engines, and then decide to either reject the takeoff and stop in the remaining amount of runway distance available, or continue the takeoff and accelerate to V2 takeoff safety speed on one engine and climb away in the remaining amount of runway. So V1 takeoff decision speed is critical. If you need to reject a takeoff, you've got to do it before the V1 takeoff decision speed. If you elect to reject a takeoff after this speed, you will go off at the end of the runway. And the only case where a captain would ever want to consider rejecting the takeoff beyond V1 takeoff safety speed is if he feels that the aircraft is unable to fly. Is there some reason why the aircraft, in his
I forgot my.
opinion, will not fly? The rejected takeoff procedure in the Honda Jet here in the manual is quite simple. If an engine fails or another situation occurs that requires the flight crew to abort the takeoff prior to reaching V1, reduce the thrust levers to idle, apply the brakes, and extend the speed brake. The Honda Jet has a modern takeoff configuration warning light in the what I call the ICAS warning system. If the aircraft is improperly configured for takeoff, might be one of the reasons why the aircraft refuses to take off. And the takeoff warning system in the Honda Jet covers these systems. If the aircraft flaps, speed brake, or parking brake, or trims are not configured in the approved takeoff position, you'll get the takeoff warning light. Or if the wing anodized temperature is below the normal operating temperature with the system on. So some of the common things that may cause problems on takeoff, like incorrect flap setting or having the parking brake set inadvertently, like we've seen before on some of the Cessna Citation jets, those errors should be trapped by this takeoff configuration warning on board the aircraft. The fact that the pilot survived will give investigators a good idea of what could have possibly led up to this accident, but the Honda Jet does have the option available for a cockpit voice recorder and a flight data recorder. However, if this flight is operated under FAR Part 91, those items are not required to be in this aircraft.
Why not?
What about taking off with the flight control lock still in place? Well, in the Honda Jet, the main flight control lock is a big giant red strap that wraps around the pilot's yoke, making it hard to even get into the cockpit of the aircraft. The only other possible control lock that could be an issue is the rudder control lock, just a small block on the rudder, but that would not prevent the aircraft from rotating for takeoff. So why did this pilot elect to reject this takeoff well above V1 takeoff decision speed? What was it about the aircraft that the pilot felt the aircraft was unable to fly? These are some of the things that the NTSB investigators will be looking at and trying to determine. Thank you so much for your support of this channel, especially the folks over on Patreon that make this content possible. See you here.
Thank you, Blanco Lirio.
When Trump has been in D.C. throughout the time that I've been here and there are large rallies, that is when I will get called a faggot or transphobic slurs just by the presence of this man and his supporters in town. The atmosphere alone is really damaging, and then on top of that, the legislation. Project 2025 is a set of legislation that has been prepared by the Heritage Foundation, and proposed to Donald Trump is a set of laws to enact once he, if he gets elected into office. Right on that first page, it describes transgender people as pornographic inherently, and throughout the pages of this document, it moves for legislation that would ban this quote-unquote pornographic material from being around kids. What this does in practice is transgender parents or people who have transgender children would be restricted from seeing their own children, among other things. There's this belief that trans people are inherently sexual, that their identity is based on being sexually predatory, when the reality is that trans people are just like cisgender people. They just want to live their lives in peace.
I voted
Peace.
Kamala. Kamala is just clearly better. She definitely slays. We don't need a revolution. We need a stable leader who can continue us on the path we're going.
Yo, 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 what's up, guys? Channel 5 election season 2024, November 5th, Washington, D.C.
I love the LGBTQ community, but they are sadly deceived.
As y'all can see, there's a fence. Past that is the horseman of the apocalypse, Robert E. Lee. No, Abraham Lincoln. Behind him is scaffolding. Behind the scaffolding is the White House. And somebody new is about to move in 24 hours. I must say, I was here exactly 4 years ago, and the vibes were much more intense. There was a lady screaming right here.
Culture appropriators.
They were yelling at each other. There was cameras everywhere. There was tension in the air. Right now, there is not much tension in the air. You got my guy right here, just chilling. What are we thinking?
I'm going for Trump. I don't know. It's like a stance in the economy a little more than the current administration. So. Yeah, lower taxes. I like what they did with immigration as well, just kind of securing the border. I know many migrants. I go to school in D.C., so.
You like them?
Do I like them?
You're homies with them? Like, are they homies?
Yeah, I'm friends with migrants.
Would you be pissed if they got deported? Imagine how
yeah,
awkward that
probably,
would be.
yeah.
Who am I voting for? Kamala.
I voted Kamala this election.
I'm voting for Kamala Harris. As an atheist Jewish man, I just want to let everyone know that freedom of religion is real. I've been seeing those protesters bring their religion on other people, and I just had to go to CVS straight this way just to make signs counter-protesting against their actions.
What are we thinking?
I'm thinking that no matter what happens, Jesus reigns. We cannot have wholesale abortion being promoted in our nation. We cannot have a furtherance of the transgender confusion that is really being enforced from the top down.
How are we going to solve the transgender confusion?
By introducing people to the love of God, because the love of God changes people's hearts.
Well, this is the White House Peace Vigil, otherwise known as the William Thomas Memorial Nuclear Peace Vigil. We don't believe the war machine should be the base of economy, so hashtag no war. We don't believe in nuclear bombs, nor do we believe in nuclear electricity, so hashtag no nukes. And we believe in justice in every individual case, justice for all, so hashtag justice.
For those who don't know, what is the war machine?
Very simply put, we are now spending about half of our congressional budget, $1 trillion a year, on endless wars. Endless wars and 800 military bases around the world. We are spending more than the next 10 nations combined. The next 10 biggest spenders, we're spending more, mostly on weapons.
The war machine is also the biggest polluter in world history.
With like fossil fuels and its carbon emissions and stuff.
Yeah, and I don't know how we can beat that system, but it needs to happen.
Obviously, there's a lot of people in my generation who are casting ballots for third-party candidates like Jill Stein because of the war in Gaza. What do you say to those people?
Well, I voted for Harris, and I'm hoping Harris wins.
I'm in school for teaching now. I'm in my last year, and I work with kids who are at risk for going into the school-to-prison pipeline, kids who are in poverty and at a higher likelihood of ending up in the criminal justice system.
Here in D.C.?
Yeah, I also am against voting for people who are complicit in genocide, but I believe strongly, like, if they're both complicit in genocide, I want to do what I can to protect my kids here who get benefits from federal programs. Like, my kids can't afford supplies, my kids can't afford food, my kids... Also, I'm concerned about what I'm going to be able to teach. I was at a conference a couple weeks ago for youth in the justice system, and someone in Louisiana is a teacher. They are not allowed to say the words diversity, equity, inclusion in schools. And like, just with bullying, straight up, you're not allowed to say the word inclusion. I'm worried about what I'm going to be able to say to them. I worry about teaching evolution. I'm in middle school, so I don't have to worry about sex ed as much, but like, I had a kid last week ask me, what's it called when a man dresses up like a woman? I'm like, I don't know, I'm not allowed to tell you. I didn't say that, but I was like, I don't know. And another kid was like, I think it's called a drag king. And then another kid's like, have you seen DraftKings? They have the best ads. It's not like a isolated incident. That's what the majority of American children are going through. So I don't know. I'm voting Kamala because I want to be able to teach my kids. I want them to not be afraid to ask questions. I want them to get the resources that I think they'll get. And if I can't protect kids abroad, I want to protect my kids here.
What do you think about what's going on? You think dogs should be able to vote? You feel like a politician represents your interests? Anyway? No? Swing voter, undecided, doesn't want to talk to us, doesn't trust the media, doesn't trust the fake news. I wouldn't either. They don't represent pups properly, but we're going to for the first time. Free all the pups. I don't mean free the pup like I don't want the pup to have an owner, but free the pup from the bondage of, other dogs.
My name is Liam.
Liam, who are you voting for?
I voted Kamala. Kamala is just clearly better. She definitely slays. I really like what her and Biden have done over these past few years with the CHIPS Act. And with promoting American semiconductors. My big thing is artificial intelligence and AI policy. I think that America needs to stay ahead on that. And I think that Biden-Harris has done a good job with it.
So are you pro-AI or anti-AI?
I'm generally pro-AI. I'm not never regulated at all. It's like defensive accelerationism. You accelerate, but you also keep safeguards to make sure it goes well.
What are the top 3 benefits of AI?
Probably medicines and biology. Like, we can do so much engineering to cure diseases and fix problems. Already we've seen it where even a lot of agriculture companies are making it much more efficient, or genetic engineering so that you can make larger crops for less money. And then I think you'll start to see that you'll have a return of American manufacturing, and you also just get cheaper and better quality consumer goods for the average person.
AI is really useful for teaching. Students are more likely scientifically to remember lessons that they're interested in. So if I filter my lesson plan through ChatGPT and be like, rewrite this with the same lesson objectives for a kid who's really interested in FIFA, or for a kid that's really interested in Minecraft, and it gives me the same lesson where I can teach the same lesson, but the worksheet or the homework I give them is going to relate it to them.
And then just creating entirely new experiences that we couldn't have even imagined before. Like the idea that I could immediately generate an image or generate a song just in 3 seconds. Like, I made a song last night even.
What was the song about?
About the election, actually. About different people who are going to be voting this time.
What are some of the lyrics in that song?
Somewhere in America, there's a young Latino man. No job, no education, not a single long-term plan. He listens to Joe Rogan and thinks our country's gone to shit. He blames his problems on China and wants Trump to deal with it.
It's unfortunate that patriotism is seen as synonymous with MAGA when it really isn't. I think part of being an American patriot is accepting that we're a diverse country where people from around the world can come here and make this country great. So the idea that you make it great by rejecting immigrants or doing mass deportations is just vile to me.
Sir, what do you think's better, the original Swag Surfing song or the Lil Wayne remix on No Ceilings?
I like the original. It's best.
Respectfully disagree. Have a good one. Gotta say though, man, I'm a bit nostalgic. It's been a minute.
But I guess it's good that it's a chill vibe.
Yeah, I don't think anything's gonna pop off tonight. Stuff. The days after, you gotta watch out for. That's when shit's gonna get real. When the election results gets called, probably on like Thursday or Friday, that's when shit's gonna hit the fan.
You working down here?
Huh? Yeah.
What's your field of employment?
I work in policy. I work in environmental policy.
Like reducing carbon emissions and stuff?
Yeah, reducing carbon emissions, fighting climate change, and making good, sound environmental policies.
A lot of people say that, like, Trump being elected again is a huge kind of defeat for the environmental policy sector.
Oh, yeah. Because if you read through Project 2025 at all, it's all about deregulating, shutting down a bunch of good environmental offices throughout the government, whether it be in the DOJ, DOI, DOE. I think we've come to the point in politics where most Republican members of Congress are not ignoring climate change, but you're like, it's not such a big deal.
It's not bad.
Focus on the economy and just keep on pushing through and just bring back those good old paying coal jobs.
Yeah. If you were to be staring down like a total climate change denier who is asking you for one concrete real life example that showed evidence of climate change,
I'll say just go to Florida, where I'm from. We get hit by at least one hurricane every year. That is not normal. People's houses literally flood every year down there. So yeah, just go down, live in one of those coastal beach towns and stuff, and see how every few years people's houses literally get destroyed and they need to rebuild. Those storms or hurricanes are only getting intenser and intenser as climate change becomes